Highway rest stops, places for brief breaks, but for some, they become final destinations. A canvas for a twisted kind of signature, a smiling face, masking unspeakable horrors. The Lore Keeper's Archive explores mature subject matter that is intended to be thought-provoking and may delve into complex and sensitive areas. Viewer discretion is advised. Hello everyone, and welcome to the Lore Keeper's Archive, where we cover everything from creepy stories from the past to cryptids, cults, and true crime. Before I get into tonight's story, I just want to thank you all for the continued support for the channel and the amazing support for the Bridgewater Triangle video. At the time of filming this right now, it's sitting at over 600 views in only a month. So now, with that out of the way, let's get into the story. When you think of the smiley face, what do you think of? Do you think of a simple design with two dots and a curved line? What feelings do you feel? Maybe joy, happiness, even a little bit of optimism. It's needless to say that it's a symbol that is known across cultures. But, unfortunately, even something innocent like a smiley face can be twisted and perverted and used to mask something truly sinister. Tonight, we're talking about the story of Keith Hunter Jesperson, aka the Happy Face Killer. A man who left a trail of victims through the American West and used that very symbol to taunt law enforcement and the public. Now, to understand the darkness that had consumed Jesperson, we need to look back at his early life. He was born in Chilliwack, British Columbia in 1955. Jesperson's childhood was reportedly marked by feelings of inadequacy that stemmed from resentment. Accounts of those who knew him painted a picture of a young man struggling with anger issues and a desire for attention, often negative. He was described as a loner, someone who felt overlooked and undervalued. These early experiences, although not excusing his actions later, may offer some insight into the psychological landscape that allowed his horrific impulses to take root. His family life was reportedly turbulent, with a domineering and often abusive father, and he struggled to find his place in the world. These formative years will lay the groundwork for a life marked by violence and a desperate need for recognition. So let's fast forward to 1990, the Pacific Northwest. It's often associated with stunning natural beauty, but it was about to become the hunting ground for a particularly sinister killer. Way before the chilling moniker of the Happy Face Killer became known, there was a first victim, and her name was Tanya Bennett. Tanya Bennett was just 23 years old when her life was tragically stolen. She was a resident of Portland, Oregon, a city known for its vibrant culture and close-knit communities. So try to imagine a young woman navigating her daily life in a bustling urban environment. Perhaps she had dreams, aspirations, connections with family and friends. Though details about her personal life are limited, we know that she was a member of the Portland community, someone with her own unique story, and that was abruptly and violently silenced. To think of her age, the potential that lay ahead of her, makes her fate all that more heartbreaking. On the evening of January 21st, 1990, marked the beginning of a nightmare. Tanya found herself in a bar in Portland, a place where people often gathered for companionship or a moment of respite. It was there that she encountered Keith Hunter Jesperson. And at the time, Jesperson was a long-haul truck driver. It was a profession that afforded him the ability to live a transient lifestyle and the opportunity to move between locations with relative ease. He likely possessed a certain charm or guise that allowed him to lure Tanya into a false sense of security. The details of their interaction in the bar remain largely unknown. But what we do know is that Keith managed to convince Tanya to leave with him, back to a rented residence that served as his temporary home. This decision, though, made perhaps in a moment of trust or vulnerability, would tragically be her last. Behind closed doors of that rented residence, a horrific act of violence unfolded. Jesperson subjected Tanya Bennett to a brutal assault. He beat her, violated her, and ultimately strangled her, extinguishing her young life in a callous and unforgivable manner. The autopsy would later confirm the extent of the violence. The sheer brutality of the attack demonstrating a level of rage that is difficult to comprehend. Afterwards, in a chilling display of disregard for human life, Jesperson disposed of Tanya's body near the scenic but isolated Columbia River Gorge. The following day, January 22nd, 1990, her remains were discovered. Imagine the scene. A young woman's body found discarded along the old Columbian River Highway. Incredibly, the initial investigation took a devastating wrong turn. A woman named Laverne Pavlinick came forward and falsely confessed assisting her boyfriend, John Snozviak, in Tanya's murder. The reasons behind the false confessions are complex and deeply troubling. Perhaps coercion, fear, or a misguided attempt to protect someone played a role. Regardless, despite later recanting her statement, both Laverne and John were wrongly convicted of Tanya Bennett's murder. Just for a moment, think about that injustice of the situation. Two innocent individuals were incarcerated, their lives upended, forced to endure years of imprisonment for a crime they did not commit. For nearly 6 years, they languished in prison, while the actual killer remained free, driving the very highways that had become his hunting ground. This tragic error highlights the fallibility of the justice system and the profound consequences of flawed investigations and false confessions. The impact on Laverne and John cannot be understated. Their lives were irrevocably altered, their reputations tarnished, and their faith in the system shattered. Tanya Bennett's life, though tragically brief, serves as a very important and heartbreaking reminder of the devastating consequences of violent crimes. Her story underscores the profound loss experienced by victims and their families. Furthermore, the wrongful conviction that followed her murder adds another layer of tragedy, highlighting the critical importance of thorough and accurate investigations to ensure that justice is truly served, not only for the victim, but for those wrongly accused. Tanya Bennett's memory should serve as a constant call to vigilance and a renewed commitment to preventing such senseless acts of violence and ensuring the integrity of our justice system. Following Tanya Bennett's murder, Jesperson seemingly resumed his life as a long-haul truck driver. As stated, it was a profession that not only provided him with constant mobility across state lines, but it also offered a significant degree in anonymity within the close-knit yet transient world of trucking communities. His assigned route took him across major interstate highways like I-5, the primary north-south artery of the West Coast, as well as transcontinental routes such as I-80 and I-90, connecting bustling urban centers with vast, often sparsely populated stretches of rural America. A lifestyle of a long-haul trucker in the early 1990s was characterized by long, demanding hours behind the wheel, often stretching into days with minimal sleep, leading to a sense of isolation and detachment from conventional society. The fleeting interactions at truck stops, these all combine to a unique subculture, one that Jesperson exploited to his advantage. Truck stops scattered along these highways became temporary havens, places for fuel, food, and brief social interactions among drivers, but also potential hunting grounds where vulnerable individuals might be encountered. These brightly lit oases in the dark, with their promise of respite and anonymity, provided the perfect stage for Jesperson's dark desires. The relative isolation of the truck cab itself could have provided Jesperson with a sense of control and a space to contemplate and even plan his horrific acts. Far removed from the scrutiny of established communities, the cab of his truck, his mobile lair, became a place where the boundaries of morality blurred and the lives of his victims were callously plotted. Over the next few years, a disturbing and chilling pattern began to emerge along these well-traveled corridors. Women, often those in precarious circumstances, such as workers soliciting rides or services near the highway off-ramps and truck stops, hitchhikers, desperate for transportation, or individuals grappling with personal or economic hardships begin to vanish without a trace in California, Oregon, Washington, and Wyoming. These were women who, for various reasons, found themselves on the fringes of society. It made them particularly vulnerable to predators like Jesperson. Their disappearances often went unnoticed for extended periods, their absence not immediately triggering widespread alarm. Their bodies, when discovered, often weeks or months later, were typically found in secluded, often desolate rural areas accessible by secondary roads or dirt tracks, leading away from the main highways. The cause of death, grimly consistent: strangulation, using materials readily available within a truck, such as lengths of rope, tie-down straps, or even wire. These makeshift ligatures readily available in his truck became the instruments of death. It's a chilling testament to Jesperson's code efficiency. The immense geographical distances separating these initial crime scenes, sometimes hundreds or even thousands of miles apart, coupled with the fact that the victims came from diverse backgrounds and held no obvious connection to one another, presented an almost insurmountable challenge for local law enforcement agencies. Each disappearance was tragically and understandably treated as an isolated local incident, with investigators often hampered by limited resources, a lack of interstate communication protocols, and the absence of unifying theories that could link these disparate cases to a single mobile predator operating under the radar of the nation's vast highway network. In August of 1992, Cynthia Lynn Rose became another victim. Cynthia was in Turlock, California, when she crossed paths with Jesperson. Details about her life are sparse, but we know she was in the Central Valley, known for its agriculture and highways, became a part of Jesperson's hunting ground as his work as a long-haul truck driver took him across the state. Like many of Jesperson's victims, Cynthia was vulnerable, and her life was tragically cut short. Jesperson's path crossed with Cynthia's at a truck stop. These locations, designed to provide rest and services to truck drivers, became hunting grounds for Jesperson. He preyed on transient women, individuals often overlooked and easily isolated. Truck stops, with their constant flow of people, provided a perfect environment for his crimes. Diesel fumes and cacophony of idling engines, the harsh glare of the fluorescent lights, these were sights and sounds that formed the backdrop of Cynthia's final encounter. What exactly transpired between Cynthia and Jesperson remains largely unknown. Accounts indicate that Jesperson encountered Cynthia at the truck stop, and tragically, she ended up in his truck. Whether through deception, coercion, or a combination of both, Jesperson lured her into his mobile death chamber. While his exact motives are only known to himself, we know that Jesperson strangled Cynthia. The life was choked out of her. Her final moments filled with terror and pain. Her body was discovered in Turlock, California, a stark and desolate end to her life. The once vibrant young woman was reduced to a lifeless form, discarded in the pariah of a society that had failed to protect her. Once again, Cynthia's murder is another grim example of Jesperson's modus operandi. He targeted vulnerable women, using his position as a truck driver to lure and isolate his victims. The anonymity of the road and the transient nature of his victims made it easier for him to commit these heinous crimes. Each murder left behind grieving loved ones and further highlighted the predator's brutality, leaving a trail of devastation across the American landscape. The loss of Cynthia Lynn Rose is a reminder of the fragility of life and the ever-present danger that lurked in the shadows of the open road. A month later, November 1992, Jesperson murdered Lori Ann Pentland. Jesperson encountered Pentland at a truck stop. These encounters at truck stops followed a pattern. Jesperson would meet women, often in vulnerable situations, lure them to his truck. The truck, a symbol of his mobility and freedom, became a tool for abduction and murder. He strangled her, left her body in Oregon. The dense forest and winding roads of Oregon became a silent witness to Jesperson's brutality, the beauty of the landscape masking the horror that had transpired. In June 1993, Jesperson killed a woman he referred to as Cindy, later identified as Patricia Skipple. They met at a truck stop in Corning, California. The interaction was brief, a transaction that ended in violence. Her remains were found in Gilroy, California. the vast architectural fields of California, stretching under the relentless sun, became the final resting place for Patricia, another victim of Jesperson's cruelty. September 1994. Suzanne Kellenberg was found in Florida, confirming details that only the killer would have known. The swamps and wetlands of Florida, teeming with life, also concealed death. Suzanne's murder highlighted Jesperson's ability to operate across vast distances. His reach was seemingly limitless. January 1995, Angela Mae Subsbury met Jesperson at a bar in Spokane, Washington. Unlike some of his other victims, Angela had spent time with Jesperson before he murdered her. She traveled with him in his truck, and then Jesperson strangled her because he claims she wouldn't let him sleep. The excuse of a restless trucker underscores the casualness of Jesperson's violence. He left her body in Nebraska, though she was likely killed in Wyoming, further illustrating his callous disregard for state lines or human life. And in March of 1995, Julie Ann Winningham, who was, believe it or not, Jesperson's girlfriend, became his final victim. This crime was particularly chilling as it demonstrated Jesperson's willingness to kill even those with whom he had a personal relationship. He murdered her in Washington state. The betrayal of trust, the violation of intimacy, added another layer of depravity to his crimes. In 1994, the investigations into a cluster of unsolved murders stretching across the American West took an unprecedented and deeply unsettling turn with the sudden and calculated emergence of a series of anonymous, meticulously handwritten letters that began to arrive at the doorsteps of various law enforcement agencies, most notably the Oregon State Police, who were actively investigating several of the confirmed deaths. The handwriting within these letters exhibited a distinct, somewhat rounded and flowing style, yet with occasional inconsistencies that would later be noted by handwriting analysis. The paper used was often commonplace, lined notebook paper, further emphasizing the mundane facade behind the horrifying content. These were not ramblings of a madman, but were carefully constructed communications of a killer who wanted to be known. Each letter contained boastful and chillingly specific accounts of the murders, often referencing intimate details about the victims' physical appearance, the precise methods of their strangulation, sometimes even mentioning the type of knot used, and the remote locations where their bodies had been left. Details that, in several key instances, had been intentionally withheld from public knowledge by investigators to safeguard the integrity of their inquiries. This level of specific detail lent a disturbing and undeniable credibility to the author's claims, which understandably sent chilling waves through the investigative teams. The investigators, hardened by years of dealing with the worst of humanity, were confronted with a new level of audacity, a chilling and calculated taunt. And then there was the signature. It was a deceptively simple, almost childlike drawing of a smiley face. It seemed to have often been rendered with a casual flick of the pen, sometimes accompanied by a brief taunting phrase or a seemingly harmless yet deeply unsettling remark. This smiley face, a symbol of cheerfulness and innocence, became a grotesque emblem of death. The style of the smiley face itself varied subtly from letter to letter, but its consistent presence became the horrifying trademark of Keith Hunter Jesperson, swiftly earning him the grim moniker, the Happy Face Killer, a label that would unfortunately achieve widespread infamy through national news coverage, further inflating Jesperson's already considerable ego. These letters were not merely confessions. They were carefully orchestrated campaigns of psychological manipulation. They were a direct and arrogant challenge thrown down to authorities who had thus far failed to apprehend him. They served as a potent and disturbing means for Jesperson to not only claim ownership of his heinous acts, but also to reveal his perceived intellectual dominance and his ability to remain a phantom in their grasps, forcing investigators to chase shadows and react to the narrative he was so brazenly constructing. The arrival of these unsettling letters injected a new level of complexity and frustration into the investigation, creating intense pressure on law enforcement to decipher the truth within their pages and to finally unmask the individual behind the smiling symbol of death. The letters became a macabre game of cat and mouse, with Jesperson holding the cards, dictating the pace, and reveling in the fear and confusion that he was sowing. Internally, debates likely raged within the various agencies regarding the best course of action, how to interpret the information, how to respond, if at all, and rather to attempt to communicate back to the sender through carefully crafted media releases, which is a tactic sometimes employed in serial killer cases. The ethical and strategic dilemmas were huge. How to catch a killer who clearly craved attention without further glorifying his crimes or endangering potential victims. While the letters primarily focused on details of the crime and occasionally hinted at Jesperson's feelings of being overlooked or wronged in the past, they never provided enough concrete personal information to lead to his immediate identification. And these glimpses into his psyche only added to an unsettling nature of the communications. The taunting nature of the letters, combined with the gruesome details they contained, created a climate of fear and uncertainty within the communities where the murders had been occurred, further underscoring the chilling power of the Happy Face Killer's macabre communication. Now, I want to take this time to remember the victims. It's crucial at this point to remember the victims. These were real people with lives, families, and dreams that were tragically cut short. While Jesperson sought infamy, it was their stories that deserved to be told and remembered. Among his victims, there was Julie Ann Winningham, Tanya Bennett, Suzanne Cullenberg, Patricia Skipple, Cynthia Lynn Rose, and Angela May Serbsey. Each of these women was more than a statistic in a horrific crime spree. They were individuals whose loss left an indelible scar on the loved ones and their community. And a reminder that we must never forget the human cost of violence. As the letters continued to arrive, law enforcement agencies began to collaborate. recognizing the chilling connection between the seemingly disparate cases. The details provided in the letters, while sometimes containing inaccuracies, often held enough specific information to suggest that the author had direct knowledge of the crimes. The smiley face signature became a key piece of the puzzle, linking the murders in different states. Investigators faced a daunting task of piecing together the movements of a long-haul truck driver across thousands of miles and identifying potential victims that fit the patterns described in the letters. This was a search for a needle in a haystack that spanned the vastness of the American West. The relatively early stages of forensic technology at the time presented further challenges to the investigators. DNA analysis was in its infancy, and other modern tools were not yet available. The investigators relied on meticulous record keeping, witness interviews, and good old-fashioned detective work. But then a breakthrough in the case came in March of 1995, when Keith Hunter Jesperson was arrested in Saluda, Washington, in connection with the murder of his girlfriend, Julie Ann Winningham. This arrest was the accumulation of countless hours of investigation, a lucky break that finally brought the killer into custody. During the investigation that followed, Jesperson confessed to not only Winningham's murder, but also to the series of the other killings he had been taunting authorities about within the letters. His confession revealed a disturbing narrative of opportunity, anger, and a chilling desire for recognition. He detailed his methods, often involving strangulation, and spoke with a chilling detachment about the lives he had taken. There was no remorse, no regret, only a cold recounting of his dark deeds. The mask of the seemingly ordinary truck driver had finally been ripped away, revealing the hideous reality beneath. The man behind the wheel, the man who had shared the road with countless others, was a serial killer. While Jesperson confessed to numerous murders, the exact number of his victims remained uncertain. He often provided conflicting details and sometimes claimed responsibility for unsolved cases, muddying the waters of the investigation. This raised serious questions about the accuracy and completeness of his confessions. Was he truly confessing to all the murders he committed, or was he exaggerating his body count for further infamy? Investigators faced the difficult task of verifying his claims and piecing together the truth from a web of potential lies and half-truths. This uncertainty adds another layer of complexity and tragedy to the case, leaving the families of potential unconfirmed victims without closure. Keith Hunter Jesperson was eventually tried and convicted for the murders of several of his confirmed victims. He received multiple life sentences, ensuring that he would spend the rest of his miserable life behind bars. The courtroom, once a place of justice and order, became a stage for his final act in the macabre drama. While the convictions brought a sense of justice to the families of the known victims, the lingering questions about the full extent of his crimes and the potential for other unknown victims continued to haunt the case. The trial offered a glimpse into Jesperson's psyche, revealing a man driven by deep-seated anger, a need for control, and a disturbing lack of remorse for his actions. The image that emerged was that of a cold, calculated killer, a man devoid of empathy and compassion. Understanding the motives behind his horrific acts is a complex and often unsettling endeavor. Psychological evaluations of Jesperson have attempted to shed light on the factors that may have contributed to his violent behavior. Traits such as narcissistic tendencies, antisocial personality disorder, and a deep-seated need for power and control have been suggested. Now, I'm not saying that all antisocial people are capable of horrific acts, but it fits in this case. His use of the smiley face can be interpreted as a manifestation of his desire to taunt and mock authority, a chilling symbol of his perceived supremacy. This seemingly innocent symbol, twisted into a sign of death, became a chilling reminder of his capacity for evil. However, it is crucial to remember that psychological profiles are not an excuse for such brutality, but rather attempts to understand the darkest corners of the human mind. The case of the Happy Face Killer left an impact on the public consciousness. The image of the smiley face, forever tainted by its association with such brutal crimes, serve as a dark reminder of the evil that can lurk beneath a seemingly normal facade. The uncertainty surrounding the true number of his victims also continued to fuel that sense of unease for the families and friends of women who disappeared during the time of Jesperson's activity. The possibility that he may have been responsible remains a painful yet unresolved reality. His case also highlights the challenges faced by law enforcement in investigating crimes committed by transient individuals across vast geographical areas. The story of the Happy Face Killer is a dark and disturbing chapter of criminal history. It's a story of unimaginable loss of lives tragically cut short, and the chilling capacity for evil that exists within some individuals. We may never fully comprehend the motivations behind such brutality, but it is important to remember the victims and to learn from these horrific events. Understanding the patterns, the psychological factors, and the investigative challenges that can hopefully contribute to preventing such tragedies in the future. This is the first time I've ever ended a video like this, and I'm sure it won't be the last. But if you have any information related to unsolved missing persons cases from the 1990s in the western United States, please contact your local law enforcement agencies. Let us never forget the victims of violence and continue to strive for a safer and more just world. It's hard to segue into something after that, but please consider joining our growing community by subscribing. I love hearing from you in the comments, so feel free to post your thoughts and let me know what you think. And don't forget to like the video if you enjoyed it. As for me, I'm going to see if I can remove emojis from my phone. I'll see you guys in the next nightmare.